Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Stephen Rondina from BleacherReport.com's esports section. Also seen on Washington Post, WhatCulture.com, and probably some other sites over the years. Today I'm here to talk about this past week of Dota 2. This is obviously our first episode. Obviously for me, maybe not for you. Hopefully going to be doing this weekly, pretty consistently. Today is a Wednesday, so probably going to stick around towards that day, maybe shift back and forth a little bit, see what works going forward. Either way, here to talk about what happened from the week starting January 4th to January 11th. As you probably saw from the title of the video, three primary stories we're going to focus in on are the roster locks, major registration list heading into the Kiev Major. The roster's locked on Monday, so 2 days ago, and going to talk about some of the new teams that formed and some of the other things that happened. Also, the results to ESL One Genting in Malaysia this past weekend. Very fun tournament with a not so surprising outcome. And finally, going to talk about the WESG, the World Esports Game Tournament that's starting off tomorrow. So I'm going to talk about those three things, and may as well jump right into it. So, starting off, let's go with ESL One Genting. Let me switch over to screen share here on Google Hangouts. All right, so nice infinity shot there. So these are the results for ESL One Genting. Digital Chaos takes first place, Newbie second place, and Virtus Pro and Wings Gaming split third and fourth. And then the bottom half of the tournament, you have Team NP and Execration in fifth and sixth. Seventh and eighth go to Fnatic and WGU. So this is the first big tournament since the 7.0 patch launched. Well, depending on how you qualify big, but one of the first big, one of the first big tournaments at the very least. Two major observations from someone who lost a great deal of sleep watching these. So, as you can probably tell by the results, they are pretty completely unsurprising. Entering the tournament, you would expect these four to be the top four. You know, Digital Chaos and Newbie, both very strong teams. Digital Chaos was top four, I believe, in the Boston Major. Virtus Pro, even though it didn't go too far in the Boston Major, was still the best team entering it, off of the Summit 6 and also a very, very strong group stage. Wings Gaming, obviously, your reigning defending TI champions, and Newbie still probably the best overall team in China, next to Wings Gaming. So to see the tournament shake out this way is very unsurprising, and that's probably a good thing in general. A lot of people didn't really know how the 7.0 patch was going to impact the competitive scene. This is a very small sample size, obviously, but the fact that you had these four teams beating out a good, but not necessarily elite at this point, Team NP, and the other three, Execration, Fnatic, and WGU, ending up in the bottom half of the tournament. These are what you would expect. So at least to this point, we haven't seen anything especially wild come out of the 7.0 patch. This is Digital Chaos's first LAN win, and a very strong performance. You can see from the brackets below. They had strong group stages and beat out Virtus Pro and Newbie. And Wings Gaming is no easy out, but Wings has kind of been struggling a little bit of late. So these are probably the two best teams next to Digital Chaos, and the fact that they beat them pretty solidly is a very positive sign for them going forward. And we already knew, based off their run at the Boston Major and also TI6, that they're a very good team. And you can pretty confidently say that going forward, they're going to continue being an elite top-tier team. They've gelled well, and if anything, the 7.0 patch is going to help them going forward. So expect big things from them. Newbie, still very, very good. Obviously, they went 3-2 against Digital Chaos. They had a very strong performance on the whole. And you can still expect them to do some big things going forward. Very good team. Wings Gaming, let me pull up their results real quick. Off the top of my head, I believe that they've kind of been struggling of late. They're obviously not bad. There's no reason to, say the sky is falling on Wings Gaming. But less than amazing showing at the Boston Major after their very, very strong run at the International. Very convincing win. Yeah, it's easy to wonder if they were a very good team that got very hot at the International and might be cooling off a bit. Obviously they did well early on. Nanyang Cruise Cup, they had some solid competition. Northern Arena Beat Invitational. First place is where you would want them to be. Summit 6 was kind of stacked, looking back on it. And I don't think anybody expected Virtus Pro to really run through the field like they did. And losing to EG is nothing to cry about. They got a rough outing at the Boston Major. The format of that tournament was less than ideal. So them playing against EG and then just dropping out in the first round, again, nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, as you can see, EG has been kind of their kryptonite of late. And you would expect them to be top 4 at ESL One Genting. So the fact that they haven't been as dominant as they were, in the build-up to the Boston or to the International, kind of shows that they might have gotten very hot, but it's still very early to read into their not taking first place every time of late. We'll see how they pan out. I expect them to still be one of the top competitors in Dota 2, and what's more, traditionally, even though it didn't happen this past year, traditionally you will see the winner of the International have the opportunity to get a direct invite to the tournament, assuming they don't break any roster rules as EG did, which, is a completely different topic. So they should probably stay together, and I expect they'll be a competitive team going forward. Virtus Pro, same thing. Very good team. Got very, very hot entering the Boston Major and seemed to have cooled down quite a bit. So the tournament results. Boston Major. Yeah, so ESL One Genting isn't listed here, but they beat up IG Vitality at the Boston Major, which you would expect them to. Then they beat up, who did they play in the second round? Oh, never mind. So they beat up IG Vitality, and that was a convincing win, but they lost to EG immediately after. They're not quite as known a commodity at this point. Wings Gaming was suspected to be quite good before taking TI6. So we'll see how they pan out going forward. They're still a very formidable team, but we'll have to see how much meaning you can put in this win at Summit 6 going forward. And Newbie, still amazing. And yeah, that's ESL One Genting. Another big observation outside of the outside of the actual teams, you saw a lot more in the way of game length. Basically, the way games shook out at ESL One Genting, you saw a lot more in the way of under 30-minute games or just around 30-minute games, and also a lot more in the way of longer games, 50-minute plus. Don't really know. This is still obviously a very small sample size, given that it's one tournament. We don't know how much of an impact 7.0 will have going forward in that way. But for now, at least, it looks as though, judging just from ESL One Genting, that you're going to see either a lot more in the way of short games, and then we'll see what goes on after that. Virtus Pro, you saw 26 minutes, 46 minutes, a 22-minute game here, 39-minute and 70-something minute, 33 minutes. Then on this side of the bracket, or in this group, under 30 minutes, 42 minutes, 47 minutes plus, 26 minutes, and 33 minutes. So you're seeing a lot more in the way of shorter games. Still not short games, but shorter games. You did, however, see a lot more, like I said, 50-minute plus games. So going forward, going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out. I mean, you can pretty confidently read into the 7.0 patch that, and also just other patches looking back, that Valve is trying to shorten games at least a bit. I don't think you can ever transform, Dota into a short game and keep the integrity of the game itself. But you can generally read into things like increasing GPM, increasing how much gold you passively get, lengthening respawn times, etc., etc. You can read into that as them trying to shorten games. And it seems to some degree that they've succeeded in that you saw a few under half-hour games here that you didn't see in past games. I mean, just look at this series between Digital Chaos and New B. You see 3 games hovering just at that 30-minute mark, and one a bit over in 37 minutes, and then you see one 52-minute game. So that's probably what Valve is looking for on the whole. We are seeing esports in general move to television more and more with E-League and possibly some other things that are coming down the pipeline. And Dota 2 is kind of the nightmare of a broadcasting company. The game length is really prohibitive in terms of adding advertisements, confidently pacing your broadcasts around it, and so on and so forth. With games like Counter-Strike and Street Fighter, you get much more defined game lengths, since there is an absolute positive maximum to how long a game of Counter-Strike can go. So it's much easier to pace out a program and fit it into your schedule if you are a broadcasting person or in the broadcasting industry, if you're a television network. So the first step towards Dota 2 ending up on television would be to make games shorter, and not necessarily a defined length, but a more consistent range, rather than anywhere from 22 minutes to 75 minutes. So it's going to be very interesting to see going forward how they kind of tailor the game around shortening game lengths, and whether or not that makes the game more appealing to potential TV partners. You see League of Legends with working with MLB Advanced Media to create their own streaming service, and I don't necessarily think Valve would want to do that at this point. Obviously Riot's bread is buttered by League of Legends, and a great deal. They're making a pretty penny off of their handling of the tournament scene in League of Legends. Valve's bread is buttered by Steam, and everything with Dota 2 and the tournament surrounding Dota 2 is kind of just cherry on top. So it's going to be very interesting to see if that is Valve's plan, and also if that does warm up some networks into broadcasting Dota 2. So that's ESL One Genting. We're going to move on now to the new rosters that were finalized on Monday. So a lot of teams stayed the same. That's worth noting. A lot of teams stayed the same, and that is somewhat surprising, somewhat not surprising. The fallout of TI6 kind of makes you feel like nobody is ever safe. But for the most part, things remained steady. You saw a lot of teams stick together as is. EG, Team NP, Virtus Pro, several bunch of others all stuck together with that same 5-man team. It's, for the most part, the teams that really got shaken up were the ones on the kind of fringe, the kind of not quite top end, not quite necessarily international level, but good teams that are capable of winning games against the elites. So you saw them make the moves to try and get over that hump, and that was mostly what you saw in terms of who made the moves. So on this article, I encourage you to check it out on my Bleacher Report profile. I made some handy tables about teams that changed and teams that were formed. So we're going to start from the top. Chinese Dota. You saw Wings Gaming stay the same. You saw a bunch of moves from the rest of the Chinese teams, though. So LGD Gaming, the retirement, but not, of Zhao 8 kind of really changed their priorities in terms of LGD Forever Young. He's gone, so obviously Zhao 8's gone now from LGD Forever Young, and they moved over Yao to the primary LGD brand. So you can kind of read into it that they're kind of see how LGD Forever Young can pan out. Maybe keep it as kind of a feeder team for their primary LGD brand. But it looks like this LGD Gaming team is going to be their focus, which wasn't the case entering the Boston Major. It really felt like they were trying to field two really legitimate Dota 2 teams. It doesn't feel like that's their plan anymore. Same with Vici Gaming. They reunited some of their players from their really strong 2014-2015 season. And they have very strong carry and aggressive. You might remember him from TI5 with CDEC. So they have a very strong Vici Gaming J team. Meanwhile, their primary Vici Gaming team isn't, I would say, took kind of a hit from their moves. Not a bad team, but I definitely think that Vici Gaming J has kind of transformed into their, the team that they're really prioritizing. We'll see going forward. You never know what, you can't necessarily put 5 good players together and expect to get a good team out of it. But we'll see how LGD Gaming and Vici Gaming J shake out. I would think that they're going to be on the high end, but we'll see if they can unseat other groups like Newbie and Wings Gaming. So here's some of the other teams that got shaken up. January 25th, it's got 3 members of the former Escape Gaming team, which made it to TI6, though they washed out in the first round after making it through the wild card tournament. They lost a couple of their players, but filled in the gaps with Trixie and Hanny. I think that's how you pronounce that name. So having that core group of a team that did make it to the international is big. You can't necessarily expect that they're going to make it again, but we'll see how they can handle this upcoming season. Natus, Vincere, Navi, we saw them dump their team outside Dendy in general. They, rather than look to Russia and Ukraine, they looked out west in Europe. They have a Swede in Pajkat. They have, I believe, a Dane in Biver, and RMN, I think, is German. Let me check. So that's probably a good move on the whole. We saw them wash out very early from the international, and I think I personally, and I think many others, were surprised that they stuck to those 5 men for their Dota 2 team. Yeah, I was right. So I think many of us were surprised that they stuck out with that that team that had a very unfortunate go of it at the international. And this hard not to view it as an upgrade. Again, you can't put 5 players together and expect to get a good team out of it, but you can certainly like what they're doing and expect them to do better than losing. So Vega Squadron picked up Sonico and Dichira, and Execration got pretty shaken up on the whole. They lost the bed to one of the other teams I'm going to talk about shortly. And just in general, they had a really rough last 6 months or so. They washed out of the wild card tournament at the international. They had visa issues kill their direct invite to the Boston Major, so have to feel bad for them. And now their roster isn't as strong as it looked previously. So we'll see. We'll have to see how they shake out, but have to feel bad for Execration as a team. Also notes, as you can see here, MVP Phoenix is not fielding a team, which is kind of sad. They have a new team called MVP Revolution. They signed a Kyrgyzstani team. Kind of sad to see the MVP Phoenix brand gone. That was a team that really put Korean Dota on the map. It's a region that is mostly known for its League of Legends, also StarCraft as well, but at this point mostly League of Legends. And they showed that there is a pretty good talent pool in Korea as well. But the MVP Phoenix players have all found new homes elsewhere, and it looks like they're just hanging it up for now. And that's kind of sad, but them's the breaks in Dota 2, unfortunately. Fnatic, as of when I wrote this, let's see if it's still the case. They had 4 players, and that's it. So, now they have 3 players. All right, so In Your Dream is gone. You have these 3 players are quite good. Mushi, Ohio, and Febi. That's a good core for your team, but if they can find the right people around them, you can put that into a very solid team. But we're going to have to see what they can do, and they're going to have to play their way through the open qualifiers. That's not necessarily too tough now. It's not too tough. The Southeast Asia region is kind of shaky at the moment in terms of its overall talent. So we'll see. Now changing over to new teams. So we got 3 big brand new teams in Wanted, Team Onyx, and Bears. I don't know if that's actually how they expect you to pronounce it, but I'm going to pronounce it Bears, and I'm going to continue pronouncing it Bears for now, at least. So Wanted. Big story out of this is that it's captained by Peter Dager, PPD, the former captain and current CEO of Evil Geniuses. It definitely feels weird that PPD is both coming out of retirement to play on another team that's not EG. He talked about it on his YouTube channel. Basically, the Boston Major kind of made him feel nostalgic for his days as a player. And he insisted that he is still, first and foremost, the CEO of EG. We'll see if that stays the case as some of the bigger tournaments start coming up. But looking over the team, it's quite good. QO, formerly from MVP Phoenix, is a very good player. PPD, he captained a team to TI5, to winning TI5. That's a huge accomplishment. And you can't look at that as anything else. You got a pub star in Boris. He may not keep that name, according to PPD. We'll see how that shakes out. You have Chessie, formerly from Complexity. He went on a hiatus after TI6. He's back now. We'll see how he can perform with this team, but Those three players alone give you a pretty darn good core group. And then there's Jo. Let's pull up who he is. Formerly from various NA teams from Evil Geniuses back in the day. So of these three teams, this is probably the team you're most optimistic about. And I could see them, depending on how they can gel, and depending on how PPD handles juggling being the CEO of the company and also a professional Dota 2 player. We'll see how that goes. But there's a lot of talent here, and that counts for a lot. So next over, Team Onyx. Onyx like the stone, not Onyx like the Pokemon. You have Demon, Bulba, and Mason, three veterans of the North American scene. You also have Dubu, formerly from MVP Phoenix, and Abed, formerly from Team Execration. The team naturally has come under fire a lot for the presence of Bulba, the so-called team assassin, which I don't quite agree with. I mean, that's a topic for another day, though. But there's a lot to like about that team. Even you can bag on the play of Bulba and to a lesser degree Mason, but they know Dota 2 very well, and they've been to some of the biggest stages in Dota 2. Those are three players who have been at the International and had at least some degree of success. And then you have Dubu, who's very good. And then you have Abed, who we'll see how he can gel with the team, but does not seem like he will be a liability. That's another very strong team. I think that both Wanted and Onyx are capable of getting wins among some of the, at face value, they seem like strong competitors to a team like NP or Complexity. We'll have to see how they can come together, but cause for optimism there. So Bears, founded by former Team Liquid member Fata. It's also got Forev, formerly of MVP Phoenix, but more recently of Team Secret. Well, actually, not really, because he did go back to MVP Phoenix for a month there. Either way, very good player. Put him next to Fata, and that's very good. Firo is a pub star, I believe. And then you have Yabsor and Adam. It's a very, very strong team in a very, very crowded European scene. Europe is really overflowing with talent right now. So we'll have to see how they can shake out long term. There's cause for optimism, but I don't necessarily think that there's, cause for a great deal of optimism. It's a talented group. We'll see how they shake out long term, though. And finally, eHome. With the exception of Old Chicken, basically their entire TI6 team is gone. I believe some of them stayed on in coaching roles or management roles, but functionally their TI6 team, which I placed top 6, I believe, is gone. Which is sad because it was a good crew, but man, they have, for whatever reason, Team NP has their number, and that has haunted them for weeks now. Let's pull up their recent results. Yeah, so Ice obviously gone. Fenrofer back to VGV Gaming. And yeah, just an almost entirely new lineup. Old Chicken, very good. But you can never expect a brand new team to just instantly click. It happens, but I don't necessarily. I think that this is kind of the end of eHome's days as a top-end Chinese team, and we'll see. You have some good players here, and some veteran players. formerly Vici Gaming, Guevara, called it from Ehome and Luminous, and I believe that that's the case with these other two, Ehome Keen and GDH from Ehome Keen. So it's a solid team on the whole, but it's tough to expect them to really make much noise going forward. And finally, this team was announced after major registration closed, but it's worth talking about for obvious reasons. Zhao 8 came back after a month-long retirement, and he is now the captain of Newbie Boss. This team is really remarkable, and it's really really interesting on multiple levels. You have Chuan coming back out of his own kind of mini retirement and teaming back up with Ferrari. That's cause for excitement all on its own. Obviously, they won TI2, and Chuan was quite good on newbie last year. It'll be interesting to see how he can, how good he is coming back, but cause for optimism. These two, however, are kind of the X factors. Axe is the first major, or the first woman to play for a major Dota 2 team, and very easily could become the first woman to play in a major Dota 2 LAN. Not much is known about her, but she has been around playing in the CDEC League over in China for over a year now. Primarily plays core roles, is obviously in the number 3 spot for Newbie Boss. Has not played for a major team, but has competed against noteworthy players. We'll have to see how she shakes out, but there's cause for optimism there. She has a 7180 MMR as of yesterday, and presumably is going to be playing off lane. Obviously, it's probably going to be sorted out between her and Ferrari. So we'll see how that goes. But major achievement. First woman on a major Dota 2 team. Good for her. And finally, Z9. Pretty much nothing is known of him except for the fact that he is actually the boss, the owner of Newbie. We don't really know who that is. We don't really know if he has any experience, at least as of, when I wrote down my notes for this. We don't really know who he is, where he came from, or how good he is. The broadcaster Jofi for Newbie, they pull up the tweets. Sorry about the dead air. Yeah. So, according to her, she works for Newbie. Z9 is the boss of Newbie, and that the team is "quote unquote" for fun. He has a dream to be a player. Now it's easy to wonder what's going on there. Again, we don't really know much about who Z9 is, and he's not listed as having any experience on the graphic that Newbie put up for the announcement. It's hard to wonder, or it's easy to wonder, it's hard to imagine that they would bring in, this kind of an all-star team in Zhao 8, Ferrari, and Chuan to just kind of play for fun. You don't bring in 3 of the all-time best players in Chinese Dota for the shits and giggles. Excuse my language. So, have to imagine that they're planning on sticking around long-term as a potentially top-end team. It's possible this is all just a gigantic ego stroke by the owner to bring in some of the best players in Chinese history just to, for his own amusement. That'd be kind of reminiscent of stuff like, Ramzan Kadyrov, the tyrannical dictator of Chechnya, flying in Seal and other singers to sing at his birthday party. I don't imagine it's that kind of situation, though. You know, it's possible he's some player that we don't know about, or that they're keeping it on down low. It's also possible that he is just kind of a stand-in, that he might just be a competent high-end player who is, you know, currently looking for a replacement long-term, and they just wanted to, you know, reveal the team before getting too, you know, during a relative dip in the news cycle after the major registration. So we'll see how that pans out. But again, you don't bring in Ferrari, Zhao 8, and Chuan to not play for the top prizes. I doubt it is just for fun. But that's a very, very exciting team. It's, you know, basically, at least between those three, it's an all-star team. And we'll have to see how they shake out. But a lot of cause for excitement. And last but not least, we're going to talk about WESG. So I actually talked with Red Eye on Twitter about this. I'll pull up the tweets to not really words in his mouth, but basically he griped that he was a bit disappointed by WESG not having most of the best players in Dota 2, which is completely valid. You know, very few elite level players are represented there. There are some, but for the most of the there we go. Most of the top end players are not participating. As he states, it's a ridiculous prize pool. I believe the top prize is $800,000 for the winning team. I hope the actual prize pool info from Wikipedia. Yeah, $800,000 for the top prize, $400,000 for second place, $200,000 for third place, and $60,000 for fourth place, $10,000 for fifth through eighth place, and then everybody else walks away empty-handed. But that is an enormous top prize. Like for anything outside of a Val-sanctioned event, I mean, ESL One Genting top prize was $125,000, and most of the Dota 2, and you know, that had just a few top teams. But $800,000 is a huge. It's enormous, and it is a bit of a shame, as he points out, to not have the actual elites play. But as a consumer, myself, and this is my opinion, and like I said, this is my opinion as someone who, as a fan of Dota 2 who watches pro games, I certainly like that WESG is trying to do something different. You know, they're taking an Olympics-style approach. All the teams here are unanimously from one country, and there are no exceptions. And that makes it a unique product relative to the rest of the Dota 2. Scene. I mean, how many times have we seen, you know, the same matchups recycled over and over again in Dota 2? You know, I would point to Team Ukraine as what's really kind of special about this idea. You get, you know, two players from the current Navi team, and then two who were previously on Navi, with Resolution from Digital Chaos, one of the best carry players in the world right now. You know, that is a very interesting team, and I'm more interested in seeing them play than, you know, seeing, I don't know, Complexity Gaming play, just because it's such a unique lineup that you're only going to see here. And it's a very good lineup. You know, there's so much to like about that. And theoretically, that's what you would want to see across the board. who wouldn't want to see Team USA with Universe and Hellbolda and just your dream teams. That is what the appeal is of WESG going forward. It's a shame we didn't get that here, but there's still a lot to like about this tournament. You get a really interesting team in Team Ukraine. You get Alliance here. It's going to be this is a very deceptively important tournament for them. This is their new post-TI6 lineup, and they took third place at the EU qualifiers, which is pretty good, not great. They ended up losing to formerly the Imperial, now Cloud9, also kind of Team Denmark. A lot to like about them, but for Alliance and Cloud9 in particular, this is a really big tournament. Seeing how this new Cloud9 lineup can hold up and how this new Alliance lineup can hold up against, generally speaking, not that great competition. There are strong players here, but there are a lot of hodgepodge teams and a lot of kind of tier 2 teams. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these groups can pan out against. You're looking for a strong showing from them. Long story short, you're looking for strong showings from these three, from Alliance, Horde, and Cloud9. You get the new TNC. They have pulled back together some of the talent that they had at TI6. They kind of got scattered to the wind after that tournament. They have come back together a little bit, with the Southeast Asia region kind of out, just kind of wide open. There's still reason to be bullish on TNC. So again, a big tournament for them, and then just big opportunities for pretty much all the other teams here. You get some of the different South American teams. Again, MVP Revolution from Kyrgyzstan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to see how they pan out. And there's lots to like. Starts off tomorrow, Thursday the 12th. And hopefully, they brought in a good broadcast team. Should be fun. It also includes other games. So definitely worth tuning into if you're not watching awesome games done quick. So that's the episode for today. I'm going to switch over so you can see my lovely face. Sorry for looking kind of frumpy. Sorry for this infinity shot. I'm dressed like this because I live in Calgary, and it's cold as hell, and I would like to stay warm. So we'll see if we're back next week. I will try to. I'll probably be talking about the WSG results and any other news that happens. Hopefully something happens to kind of give me something to talk about. I've been talking for too long at this point. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave a comment. I'm open to anything. I want to hear what you think about this, because that is very new. This is my first episode. Looking to continue doing this and looking for any kind of feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Feel free to ask questions. You can find me on Twitter at @Rondina. And have a great week. We'll be back here to talk about next week in Dota 2 next week.